All right, good afternoon folks, or good morning. I hope you're enjoying your pizza. We're going to get this webinar started. I'm your host, Ken Shaw. I'm the CEO and founder of Infrascale, and today we're talking about the coming extinction of the purpose-built backup appliance. The agenda for today looks a bit like this. First, we're going to talk through challenges with today's backup systems. Then we're going to talk about the rise of this new paradigm, hybrid cloud data protection. After that, we'll go through five core reasons why here at Infrascale we believe that the purpose-built backup appliance is going to go the way of the dinosaurs. Then I'll tell you a little bit about Infrascale as a company, and then we'll do the Q&A and Kindle giveaway. So for those of you who don't know, we give away a Kindle at these events, and that goes to the person who asks the most on-topic questions throughout the webinar. So if you haven't already, find the questions tool in the GoToWebinar software, and as we're going through the presentation, feel free to ask questions. We'll answer those at the end, and also in that Ask Me Anything free form, and then we'll announce the winner of the Kindle at the end of today's webinar. So just a very brief overview of Infrascale before we get into the meat of the presentation. We've been around since 2006, and as a company we're trying to build a complete data protection platform. So if I can draw your eyes to the top left of this screen, you see a grey box where we combine cloud backup, disaster recovery, archiving and file sharing into a single web-based application that you can deploy and get started with tomorrow. Salesforce is sort of our spirit animal here at our company, and people look askance at me when I say that, but the reason I say that is that Salesforce came along and took an industry that was dominated by a few old companies, CRM, enterprise software, and they took deployment time and cost from 6 months and millions of dollars down to 24 hours and $5 a month per user. At Infrascale, we believe that the data protection industry is ripe for similar disruption. It's dominated by old geriatric companies like EMC and IBM, who are no longer innovating and no longer delivering value to you as users of data protection solutions. So at Infrascale, we're trying to deliver a single pane of glass that allows you to complete all these data protection operations easily and simply. And this approach seems to be quite popular. We're storing more than 20 billion objects in our distributed data grid. We have more than 1,000 channel partners worldwide, 1 million endpoints being protected, where an endpoint's a laptop, a VM, or a physical server. We've got 16 data centers around the world that we serve our own cloud out of. Some of our customers include Lockheed Martin, the American Red Cross, and at the bottom right you'll see a recent award we won from the Gartner Group as the coolest vendor in DR and business continuity, and we're going to take a look at why we won that cool vendor award from Gartner throughout the presentation. Now, before we dive in, I've actually got a question for you all. So if you can put down your pizza and reach forward and choose one of the options on the screen, we like to understand who our audience is. We do this so we can tailor the content for future webinars, and so that the examples I use in this particular webinar today are going to be on point for you. So if you can reach forward and answer the poll, that'll be wonderful. I'll give you a few seconds to do that. %71% of you have voted. We like to get 80%. Come on, folks. Put down the pepperoni. All right. So the results so far are that it's interesting. 44% of the audience today is between 100 and 500 employees. 38% of the audience is more than 1,500 employees, and then the rest is sort of scattered throughout. Very interesting. Okay, terrific. Thanks for doing that, everybody. So let's look at challenges with data protection in 2015. So the first point I want to make, and this is going to, I think, ring true with everybody in the audience, is that business in general is living with a false sense of security around data protection. Some frightening statistics. 70% of mid-market enterprises surveyed by the Gartner Group said they're not confident with the statement, our backup and DR operations are well managed and planned. Symantec's got research that shows that 50% of SMBs back up less than 60% of their data, which is scary. IDC has shown that for mid-market enterprises, the cost of complete downtime for an hour averages $20,000 for business in North America. So we're in this weird state where data's never been more important, uptime and availability's been never been more important, but the state of our protection has never been worse. And so one asks oneself, why is that? Well, one of the leading causes is what I call data fragmentation. On the slide here, if you look at the left-hand side, this is taking you back to, say, 1995 and what data protection looked like back then, 20 years ago. We had what I call our data castle. So this was our on-prem infrastructure, where our apps lived. Our compute was our biggest, most expensive resource. Storage was less expensive. Insofar as we had end users that we were worried about, they were running corporate-owned laptops, running Windows 95 or Windows NT or some sort of Windows variant. And they were generally coming in over VPN to access data that was stored inside the data castle. So we could focus our energies and efforts in data protection around the data center. Fast forward to today, and you have the right-hand side of this slide, the red chaotic version, where in the data center, it's no longer a pretty picture. Virtualization has led to a complete fragmentation of data across multiple hypervisors and across physical and virtual infrastructure. The rise of both Windows and Linux in the data center means that we no longer have a homogeneous application server infrastructure. We've now got to deal with Linux, Unix, Windows, and other operating systems. The rise of cloud has meant that we've now got important data sitting out in cloud infrastructure, and it's not all within the data castle. Then if we look at user land, things get even worse. Whereas once upon a time we knew it was a company-owned device, now it could be user-owned. We used to know it was running Windows, now it's just as likely to be running OS X, or frankly, it's just as likely to be running iOS as a tablet or Android operating systems. And in fact, iOS and Android OS now have collectively more users installed than Windows users. So this fragmentation creates complexity, and this complexity leads to coverage gaps, which equates to risk. Risk not just for the businesses we all work in, but risks for us and our individual jobs, because we're the ones who are on the line to protect this data. And part of the reason for the inadequate state of data protection today is the paradigm that we've all been locked in. So since the rise of the client-server model in the 90s, that has been the principal architecture of our data protection solutions. Here on screen, we've got a headquarters location. And at the bottom, we've got our Active Directory server, our database server, our application servers, and they're backing up over a LAN to a backup server, which stores data on a media server. This is the typical architecture of a typical backup deployment. Now, one of the problems with this, vis-a-vis its client-server architecture, is that it actually is then very poor when it comes to protecting our road warriors, our home users, our branch offices, and now more in growing importance, our smartphones and mobile devices. So this client-server approach is fundamentally broken because of the newly fragmented state of our data. And of course, this is just backup. If we then want to talk about long-term archiving of data, we generally have to introduce a second location. And we've got the little running man down here to denote taking data off-site, because in a surprising number of cases, this is still involving taking data off-site via tape, where we have an RPO, or recovery point objective, of days and an RTO of weeks. And it doesn't stop there. If our data protection regime also includes disaster recovery, that usually implicates the existence of a third location. This third location is designed to have a really low RTO and RPO so we can fail over quickly, but man, is it very expensive. So we've got three different solutions, all trying to solve one problem, and the result is expensive, very complicated, and still doesn't get the job done. So what would the world look like if I could have my druthers as an IT guy? Well, to begin with, I'd eliminate the 2 extra sites, and I'd at least rationalize what I have to worry about back down to the production infrastructure. And then I would have a magic cloud that combined disaster recovery services, backup services, and archive services in a single solution. And I'd make sure it worked for my branch offices, my road warriors, my tablets, and my smartphones. But in general, it's not easy for me to find a solution that meets that description. And one of the biggest reasons for that is guys like me. So on this slide, I'm going to dish on other CEOs in the industry, right? One of the things that us backup vendors do is we try and stuff down your throat our particular data protection paradigm. And this is what I call the sucker's choice. When I first pitched my marketing team on this idea of the sucker's choice, they sort of looked at me quizzically and didn't know what I was referring to. And maybe it's an Australian or a British expression, but it refers to this idea that the only 2 options available, I beg your pardon, that you've got a choice between 2 alternatives with the false premise that those are the only 2 options available. Or, as an example, imagine you walk into a restaurant and you order the steak and fries. The waitress says, "Very good, sir. Would you like your steak to be stone cold or your fries to be stone cold?" And of course, that's an idiotic dichotomy. What I really want is the third way. I want a hot steak and I want hot fries. But that's akin to what's going on when it comes to your choice of data protection solutions. Today, you're often asked to choose between a cloud-based solution or an on-prem disk-based solution or a client-server-based solution. And the truth of the matter is that both of these paradigms have virtues, right? With cloud-based backup, for example, you've got the benefit of the fact that it's immediately up and running, that you've got unlimited capacity, that the cloud is by its nature redundant and resilient, that it's omnipresent and every device can connect to it. But it's got its drawbacks as well. It's got problems with data upload time. It's slow. It's got slower recovery because it has to work over the WAN. Data leaves your network, so you've then got concerns around security and privacy, and it means that you've got to rely upon your vendor's security, which is never a great situation to be in. And if we flip over to the appliance world, it's got its benefits also, right? It supports really large data sets at high speed over the LAN. You've got data sovereignty. You know where the data's sitting. You can literally wrap your hands around the machine that it's sitting on. You get quick recovery, but it's got its drawbacks. It doesn't support distributed data, as we've discussed. Capacity planning is an absolute bear. You always get it wrong. They're expensive. Hardware is inherently fragile. As Jason Buffington over at ESG says, bad things happen on-prem. And the management of multiple appliances is particularly difficult. So thankfully, there's a transformation underway in the data protection industry, being pushed along by two sort of mega trends or two tailwinds that are driving this transformation. The first tailwind, as I call them, is the rise of hybrid cloud architectures, and in particular, a new paradigm called DRaaS, or DR as a service. And if we sort of go through our evolution slide here, in the 70s, tape became the standard for backup, and then in the 90s, it was disk. Then in the noughties, or the 2000s, cloud backup emerged as sort of the hot new kid on the block in data protection. Today in 2015, most analysts recommend a hybrid cloud backup paradigm, combining the virtues of both on-prem disk as well as off-site cloud. And now there's even this new option called DRaaS or DRaaS, which is disaster recovery as a service, and that promises this idea of push-button failover and a recovery time objective of less than 15 minutes, which is a great segue into the second major trend affecting the industry, and that is that the walls of Jericho are coming down. This is what I learned in a textbook when I studied computer science at college, that when it came to data protection, we had these four buckets: archive, backup, DR, and then failover, or HA. And that the main way to delineate between these four different categories was using RTO, RPO, and TCO, or in layman's terms, the time to restore, the point at which you restore, RPO, and then price or cost. And on this diagram, the bubbles represent levels of awesome, right? So with archive, it was not very awesome on RTO and not very awesome on RPO, but it was awesome on price. And if we go all the way to the right, failover and HA, awesome on RTO, awesome on RPO, but terrible on price. But in 2015, what we really want is a solution that looks like this: a solution with a terrific recovery time objective, a terrific recovery point objective, and a terrific price point. And because we're greedy, we also want this to be supported by a single vendor. We want it to be a simple solution. We want it to scale to petabytes and hyperscale infrastructure environments. It's got to be secure. We need terrific support, and we need partners that we can work with. And so that is what the InfraScale solution is. Here on the slide, you've got a diagram of how InfraScale gets deployed, and I'll talk more about it. But the InfraScale solution delivers a tremendous RTO, a tremendous RPO at a tremendous price point, combining the best of on-premise disk-based backup and the client-server model with the best that the cloud has to offer today. So let's go into some particular problems with the old school client-server backup-based model, or the purpose-built backup appliance model. Problem number one is that it's an expensive hardware trap. PBBAs are built on this premise that all data should be stored on local hardware regardless of age or value. And that means that we over-provision appliance capacity in disk to accommodate future data growth. Then, if we want to provide a replicated data store, we need a whole second appliance that we've got to buy. And when it comes to capacity, once we fill up our latent capacity, we've then got to buy more local hardware. And of course, if we've got a second site, we've got to buy more hardware for that second site as well. And that's juxtaposed with today's reality that local capacity in enterprise disk is more expensive than cloud storage. So why are we doing this? Surely there's a better way, and there is. So InfraScale's mission is to help you get off the hardware hamster wheel. How many of you have gone through the cycle of buying an appliance, filling it up, buying another appliance, filling it up, buying another appliance, and filling it up? Wouldn't it be better if you could have an edge-based device that contains some local storage but was smart enough to bring the power of the cloud into your network? And that's what Infrascale's cloud spillover technology does. It's a pillar of all of our products, that we use intelligent, policy-based software to move data on-site and out to the cloud and back again based upon your needs. Our software understands that not all data requires expensive local capacity, that you should be able to spill over data to the cloud based on the age and value of that data, or based on policies that you set up and create. What this delivers is it eliminates the need for the local appliance capacity as you grow, right? It becomes one size fits all, because that appliance becomes elastic. There's no longer a need to over-provision capacity with your initial purchase. There's no longer a need for you to worry about buying a second appliance for your replicated data store. So it eliminates the entirety and the complexity of the the capacity planning, estimation, and provisioning process. And when I say cloud, which cloud am I referring to? Well, the short answer is any cloud. So if you ask an Infrascale salesperson which cloud do you support, they'll tell you your cloud, our cloud, or any cloud, by which they mean that you can use Infrascale's turnkey cloud service delivered from our 16 points of presence worldwide. You can use your own private cloud infrastructure if you have it, whether that be your existing hosting provider, co-location, your own private cloud infrastructure running on Metal or VMware or Hyper-V, or you can even use the major third-party clouds like Amazon and Azure if you've already made a decision to do that as a company and enterprise. So true cloud agnosticism. So the second major reason why we believe that purpose-built backup appliances are going the way of the dinosaurs is its inability to deliver a true recovery solution. So this second chapter is about DR. And if DR to you is a muddled term, I just want to let you know that that's okay, because in 2015, DR has become an incredibly muddled term. I don't want you to read this slide, it's an eye chart. The point of this slide is that it contains 6 different use case examples or technologies that can all be described as disaster recovery solutions. And if I draw your eyes to the right-hand side, you'll see that each of these has very different RTOs, RPOs, and price points. And unfortunately, none of these are actually satisfactory. If you remember what we're looking for awesome RTO, awesome RPO, awesome price. And none of the architectures that heretofore have been adopted in the industry actually satisfy that criterion. What we're looking for is a solution that gets us out of the old hardware-centric approach to disaster recovery. The hardware-centric approach is incredibly expensive. Here on the left-hand side of the slide, we've got a production site, and then we've got a second site. And people often assume that having a full second site for failover will double your costs. Unfortunately, the truth is it can increase your cost up to 2.5 times the cost of production, because you need bandwidth, people, and software to glue it all together. What if there was a new way where you could push a button and fail over your running applications and servers to a magic second location? Well, before I answer that question, I'm going to ask you another question. So this second poll asks you about where you stand when it comes to failover DR. So which of these is you? I can fail over to a second location in under 60 minutes already. I wish I had failover DR, but I just can't afford it. Or I don't need failover DR. So we'll just give you a few seconds here to put your pizzas down, wipe your greasy hands, and answer this. All right, folks, I want to give you a nudge. We've only got half of you have voted. Let's get a few more votes in so we've got a representative set here. All right, we're up to 62% and counting. So far, half of you have said that you can fail over to a second site in under 60 minutes, which is really impressive. 44% of you have said that you wish you could fail over, that you had failover DR, but you can't afford it. And 6% of you have said you don't think you need failover DR. It looks like the voting has slowed down, so perhaps we'll finish that there. People must have their mouths full. Okay, so I teased you with the description of a solution. Let me tell you about it. Infrascale's Cloud Boot technology enables push-button failover that recovers servers, applications, and data in minutes, delivers the shortest recovery time objective, and it's easy enough for a fourth grader to use. Let me show you how it works. Here we have a diagram that represents a happy state. End users are connecting to their apps and storage on the left-hand side. Those apps and storage are being backed up to the Infrascale appliance in the middle of the screen, and that's then being replicated out to the cloud on the right-hand side. But power surge, and our primary data center is offline, so our users can no longer connect to their apps or to their storage, and they can't work. So what do? Well, we go into the Infrascale console, we find the machines that have been affected, we tell Infrascale to boot these systems. We choose whether or not we want to boot them on the local appliance or away in the cloud. Our users reconnect and keep working. And that entire process can happen in as little as 15 minutes end to end. And we deliver this at the same price point as a backup appliance. So the third major reason that we believe that hybrid cloud architectures that support DRAS are going to kill off the traditional PBBA is that PBBAs make you choose which one of your children you're going to save. Or put into literal sense, when you look at the left-hand side of this diagram, you see what a purpose-built backup appliance is good at protecting. Your physical and virtual servers, your tethered desktops, and that's it. But hybrid cloud data protection devices like Infrascale not only protect all of those tethered devices, but also protect your laptops and your mobile users as well. In fact, this is our coverage map with more than 100 operating system versions supported. We support in server land on the right-hand side of this diagram, you can see that we support Windows and all the major versions of Unix, AIX, even novel NetWare, all the major versions of Linux, VMware, and even Hyper-V. So native agentless integration with VMware and Hyper-V for virtual server protection, as well as very broad support for all of the major operating systems running on Metal. But we don't stop there. We also have an incredibly powerful endpoint data protection solution that works on PCs and Macs, as well as smartphones and tablets. So Infrascale delivers cloud backup, disaster recovery, archiving, and file sharing across any platform that you would have to support. Building on that theme of incompleteness, the fourth chapter of this is that PBBAs are just incomplete solutions. In this modern age, to build a robust data protection environment, you need to have backup, automated disaster recovery. You may or may not need WAN acceleration if you've got large distances between your sites. You want technology like the cloud spillover that we've talked about. You definitely want cloud replication somewhere in your mix. And as we continue to come back to, you need all of this at an affordable price point. Well, purpose-built backup appliances, PBBAs, just cannot deliver that anymore. And so at a conference a few years ago, I was talking about this with a partner in a session, and the partner joked, Ken, why can't I just have a magic backup box? Why do I have to cobble together all these different technologies? Why can't I just have this magic backup box that does that for me? And we laughed. But that phrase, the magic backup box, became somewhat of a catch cry at Infrascale. And so now you can find engineers and designers and product managers huddled around whiteboards here at the company asking themselves, what would a magic backup box look like? And so we believe a magic backup box would combine, on the right-hand side of this diagram, all of the goodness of direct-to-cloud backup, meaning it should be easy to deploy, manage, and scale with infinite capacity and awesome prices for long-term storage, with all the benefits of integrated PBBAs, or purpose-built backup appliances. So you should have the speed of land-based recovery and backup, and you shouldn't have any of the drawbacks of PBBAs or the client-server approach. You shouldn't have to worry about SKU selection or capacity planning. But on the network side of things, on the left-hand side of this diagram, we also think a magic backup box should include WAN acceleration. So it should include protocol optimization, and it should include over-the-WAN byte-level deduplication, like you'd find in a high-end deduping target array like a data domain. And as we've discussed already, it should include this concept of cloud spillover, of bringing the power of the cloud into your network and moving workloads intelligently back and forth from on-prem to the cloud and back again based upon the importance and value of the data involved. And on top of all that, it should be easy to manage. So with InfraScale, you get a single cloud-based dashboard that allows you to manage an unlimited number of locations and sites and an unlimited number of endpoints. We have one customer who's supporting more than 45,000 different endpoints in a single instance, all managed through one pane of glass that lets you see account usage, activity alerts, perform reporting and monitoring activities. If you're a partner, you can also rebrand the solution, and it's all managed by policy. So the second to last reason we assert that PBBAs and the client-server data protection model is going the way of the dinosaurs is security. One of the things that data protection companies don't talk about is security, but we do here at InfraScale. Why? Because we were born of the cloud, and in the cloud you need to think about security first. When you hear about these data breaches at Target and at Sony and recently at the Office of Personnel Management in the federal government, there are two things that people don't commonly know about these attacks. The first one is that backup and archive systems play a key role in these breaches. Why? Because they're fat, juicy targets for intruders. It's the one place you aggregate all your location and all of your data across all your locations and store it. And generally, data protection systems are not hardened. They're not built to withstand attack. The InfraScale system uses a technique known as double-blind encryption, pioneered by the US Department of Defense in the 70s, which is based on using two separate and independent encryption keys to store your data. It's a bit like a safety deposit box at a bank, where to get your jewels, you need to go in there with your safety deposit box key, and you need the bank manager's safety deposit box key. That same architecture is inherent in InfraScale's solution. So we have built security in, and we didn't stop there. We've then added in technology such as Find My Device and remote geolocation for your laptops, or Wipe My Device if your laptops got stolen, for example. In addition to that, the InfraScale solution is HIPAA compliant, CJIS compliant, and used by federal law enforcement throughout the United States, SARBOX compliant, PCI compliant. And so one of the things I want you to take away from this webinar is this. Your backup and archive systems are a target. You need to think about securing them. And whether you work with us or anyone else, start asking hard questions around security and encryption. And the last reason why the PBBA is going away is just its price point. They're extremely expensive. So here on screen, on the right, you've got the InfraScale price for a 10 terabyte appliance with 3 years of cloud and all of our features. And we've compared it here to Datto, Unitrends, and Barracuda. And if you've walked through an airport in the last 5 years, you've seen one of Barracuda's ads. But next time you see one, I want you to remember that you can get a better solution from InfraScale 70% less than the cost of the Barracuda solution. And that's true of all of the dedicated PBBAs or on-prem storage-based solutions. So it's time for you to evaluate hybrid cloud solutions with DRaaS capability, and it's time to free yourself from the legacy of the past architectures that we've been mired in for decades. So let me tell you a little bit more about InfraScale. As you can tell, I'm passionate about data. And here at InfraScale, we believe that every company has the right to recover their data from a disaster quickly, easily, and affordably. Everyone deserves the peace of mind that comes with knowing their business data is safe and available. And safe and available are two different things that you need to worry about. It's not good enough to know that your data is safe. You need to know that you can turn it on and run your systems in minutes if there's downtime. And so how does InfraScale deliver what we do? Well, we use the cloud. We use smart software instead of expensive hardware. We make disaster recovery push-button simple, and we build security in from the ground up. And that's led to us being named Gartner's Cool Vendor in Business Continuity and Disaster Recovery this year. And so at the bottom again, we deliver to you complete data protection in a single pane of glass combining cloud backup, disaster recovery, data archiving, and file sharing. We're protecting more than 100 petabytes of data around the world, and we would love for you to evaluate a solution, and if you're a partner, to join the InfraScale Partner Program. And don't take my word for any of this, go and do some reading. So we've talked about Gartner, but Storage Switzerland says InfraScale's changing the on-site sizing paradigm. This frees the organization from having to continually add capacity. It's the capacity planning exercise I was talking about earlier. ZDNet says InfraScale is looking to change the dynamics of hybrid cloud storage, taking the one-size-does-fit-all approach on the appliance side. And so that brings us to the end of the webinar, folks. We're going to do the Ask Me Anything Q&A now, but look, I really encourage you to play with our technology. You can talk to one of our team and get yourself a free evaluation unit so you can use the solution in your own environment if you want to do that. We'd love to talk to you. So we're going to do the Ask Me Anything now, but just an audience question. Before we do that, would you be interested in me just doing a brief demo of the solution? So I do this based on audience demand. If you'd like to see a demo, just type demo into the questions tool, and if not, we'll go into the Ask Me Anything. I'll give you a second to make up your mind. Okay, only 4 people want a demo, so unless we get a few more votes for demos, I'll go into the Ask Me Anything. Let's look at some of these questions. And again, remember, if you want to see a demo, just type demo on the line. So one of the first questions here is from Chris, where he says, so this is basically tiered cloud storage. Chris, that's right. It's similar in concept to hierarchical storage management, or HSM, where you've got your primary storage, which we don't generally deal with, and then your secondary and tertiary storage layers get taken over by the InfraScale solution. Another question here, Jane asks, what is a PBBA? So Jane, a PBBA, that stands for Purpose-Built Backup Appliance. It's a term promulgated by IDC analysts going back as far as the 90s. There's now actually some discussion among analysts and thought leaders that the term should be replaced by a broader term called DPA, or Data Protection Appliance. But either way, if you hear DPA or PBBA, it generally refers to an on-premise appliance with a lot of disk in it that you use for backup and archive. All right, so it looks like we've got a lot more for a demo. So what I'll do now is I'll just do a quick demo of the solution so you can actually see what it is that I've been talking about. So here on screen is the InfraScale dashboard. Now this is really your command center. This is where you drive the InfraScale solution and where you manage all of your endpoints. But what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to take us through to the appliances page so that we can manage the InfraScale data protection appliances or hybrid cloud appliances that I've been referring to throughout the webinar. So here on the screen you can see appliances on the left and right. The one on the left would be an appliance in your office or in your data center. And on the right-hand side, you'll see what that appliance is replicating to. So it's either replicating to another appliance, or it would be replicating to the cloud, or in the case of, for example, the first row there, it's not actually replicating to anything. So it's just a standalone data protection appliance. But what I'd really like to do is actually show you how easy cloud boot is. So I want to simulate what happens when that power surge hits and all of your infrastructure goes down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the appliance for the location and drill into it. Bear in mind I'm doing this all from the cloud. Now I can see all of the jobs and all of the devices that have been protected. And I can go across here to this Cloud Boot tab, which shows me all of the machines. Now I'm going to right-click this Exchange server and hit Boot. And this is going to walk me through a very quick wizard where I can pick the point at which I want to recover this machine. So I'm going to click here, 17th. I can set up my networking and firewall and access rules. I'm going to just allow all traffic for the purpose of this demo. Then I'll put in a notification email for who to tell when the machines come back online. And it's as simple as that. The cloud boot has been kicked off, and in just a second here, that machine is then going to be active. Okay, we can see that it's running. So we've there virtualized a machine, we've recovered it in the cloud, we've mounted it into a hypervisor, and we've made it available to you on a public IP address. So I can now just use vanilla Windows Remote Desktop and connect to that machine. I'll log in with my standard administrator credentials. I'll accept that security certificate. I'm logging in. Okay, boom. So you've just seen how easy it is for me to boot, or virtualize, mount, and boot and run a Windows server when my primary's down. And now I'm just going to go ahead and ping Google here to make sure that this thing is fully up and running and operational. Just like that. So you just watched me recover my network in under 4 minutes, right? That's how simple InfraScale makes recovery. So we're delivering disaster recovery to every business at the price point of a backup solution. All right, so I'm going to now go into the Ask Me Anything where we give away the Kindle, so don't be shy. And I've got this last question that I asked the audience that I'm just going to leave on screen throughout the entire AMA. Tell us where you are. So after watching this webinar, how would you characterize yourself? Firstly, I'm unhappy with my backup and DR system. A lot of folks are in that camp. Secondly, I'm changing my production infrastructure. Maybe you're rolling out virtualization and you want to look at changing your data protection as part of that. Thirdly, look, I'm happy with my backup system, but I'm interested in that push button DR that you demoed. Or I'm just learning. I go to lots of webinars myself just to educate myself. So while you're answering that, folks, I'm going to now go to the AMA, and we've got some questions on the line. We'll answer those, and remember, giving away that Kindle. So let me scroll up and see who had the next question. All right, Tommy's got a question. How does your environment compete with technologies like hyperconvergence that is already geo-redundant? So Tommy, you might be talking about like a SimpliVity or something. Feel free to rattle off a vendor. Hyperconverged infrastructure combines compute, network, and storage into a single fabric and moves the SAN controller away from the storage array up to the application layer or the server layer, I beg your pardon. In general, that kind of infrastructure is not designed for high density and low cost storage of data, nor is it really designed for data protection in general. It's designed to give you a highly performant converged infrastructure that scales out for high loads. What do I mean by that? It gives you fast compute, fast memory, and fast storage. So how does this compare to that? Well, hyperconverged solutions are incredibly expensive. So when it comes to just data protection, if all you're solving for is data protection, then a hyperconverged solution is going to be incredibly expensive and actually wasteful of resources. Hopefully that answers your question, Tommy. Feel free to, and that answer applies to something like a VMware vSAN or to a Nutanix or to a SimpliVity. Let me know what you're looking at in particular. Joseph asks, what are the capacities on the appliance? What sizes are available? Well, Joseph, we've got a little baby unit that starts at 4 terabytes of on-prem disk, and we've got a big daddy unit that goes all the way up to 600 terabytes. Now, it uses a scale-out architecture, which means that you can actually put multiple nodes next to one another, and that will pool storage. So you can put together a petabyte scale solutions, and in fact, we have got several petabyte scale solutions running in the field. Tommy asks, with the use of Office 365 OneDrive, is there a need for endpoint backup? Oh, Tommy, that's a great question. So firstly, I would encourage you to think about endpoint data protection, not just backup. So data protection should extend to archiving, and it should extend sometimes to data destruction in the case where laptops have been stolen. And OneDrive is a very simple syncing solution akin to a Dropbox, for example, and doesn't really deliver snapshot-based and time-based recovery options, nor does it offer things like find my device and wipe my device. So for very, very simple use cases or very, very small environments, I think OneDrive's okay. But anything more than, say, a 50-person environment, I'd recommend against using OneDrive. Jane says, but the data is commingled in one data device. Jane, I may have missed the first half of that question. Would you mind re-asking the question about the data commingling? Tommy also writes, does this service provide file versioning, meaning taking snapshots to restore to a previous version if someone accidentally hosts a file? Tommy, absolutely, and that was key to my response to you about using Microsoft OneDrive. So versioning and snapshots are built into this solution, and you can roll back your data set to any point in time using InfraScale. By default, we keep an unlimited version history, but you can overrule that with very sophisticated policies. For example, keep data on-prem for a month and then keep it in the cloud for a year and then automatically purge it. So you can actually set via policy that hierarchical storage management regime that I mentioned earlier. All right, the next question from Tommy is, does InfraScale use a formal change management process as it relates to addressing customers' requests? Absolutely, Tommy, but first and foremost, we build all of our tools so that you can drive and that you're in the driver's seat. You don't need to call InfraScale to trigger a failover. You don't need to call InfraScale to do a recovery. As I said, we build simplicity right into our solution so that you're in control. But of course, you can use us, and yes, we do then use formal change management before we would ever touch a customer's environment. Chris says, how are the images of servers uploaded to the cloud? Well, Chris, using our proprietary engine, we'll take a snapshot of that disk, then run it through our deduplication process, and then store it on our patented deduplicating file system infrastructure that sits within the InfraScale device. After that, we'll do byte-level replication to the cloud using our WAN acceleration technology, which is governed by an overall network management tool that you can use to set priority. Or, put another way, it's not going to swamp your network. You can set it up so that it goes full throttle between midnight and 8 a.m. and then when people are at work, it only uses 10% of the bandwidth, for example. And along those same lines, Rick asks, what are the internet bandwidth requirements for this solution? Well, Rick, we recommend that you have at least a 1 megabit connection to the internet when it comes to your upload speed, but that's all. Because it's using a hybrid cloud architecture where it protects immediately on-prem, then replicates to the cloud, you really don't need to have a very, very large pipe. Jane says, how does InfraScale differ from Salesforce and Box, etc.? Oh, Jane, we're very different solutions. So Salesforce is primarily a CRM. Box is a file sharing tool. So we are a hardcore data protection and DR solution. Chris says, do we support specific email and Exchange archiving options? We do, Chris. We even allow Exchange record level recovery, message level recovery. Tommy asks, what kind of reporting does InfraScale provide to customers? Tommy, out of the box, there are about 20 standard reports that you can use, but there's also the ability to customize that reporting infrastructure. So anything that we have metadata on, we can report to you on. Hendra asks, what type of storage is the data backed up in? Hendra, we use disk. So for us, it's disk to disk to disk. Jane says, how do you separate the data by company when it's in storage? Jane, like most multi-tenant SaaS-based solution providers, we've built a system that's designed to keep customer data separate, even though it may actually be residing on similar physical infrastructure. And we do that using encryption and through the way that we design and architect our software. We build it multi-tenant from the beginning. Joseph says, how is the product priced? I imagine we buy the appliance, then do we have a monthly fee per backed up machine per month? Joseph, sort of. You buy the appliance and then you generally would have a monthly subscription based on that appliance, not based on the number of protected machines. Jane asks, how do you securely separate each company's data when in storage? Jane, that's our ultra-safe encryption that we talked about earlier. So your data is encrypted with 2 separate encryption keys, one that you've got and one that we've got. And unless the 2 of us cooperate to decrypt that data, it's absolutely useless to anyone. Chris says, each device will require a client-side install, correct? Yeah, Chris. So you would need to install. So one of the things I haven't mentioned is that everything we offer is available in a pure software mode, so you do not have to purchase any hardware from us. But whether you buy just our software or whether you buy one of our appliances, yes, you need to install the software or install the appliance in your office. Joseph asks, how do we get a quote? Well, Joseph, that's easy. If you call one of the numbers that I'm about to put up on screen and that I had up on screen before, you can talk to one of our data protection specialists, or better yet, if you would like to, you can just type into the questions tool your name, phone number, and email address and say, I'd like to talk to somebody, and we'll be in touch to give you an eval or to talk through any questions that you've got. So that applies to anybody on the line. If you'd like more information, just say, my name's Joe, here's my email address, here's my phone number, please contact me, and somebody will follow up with you. All right, we've got 2 more questions here. Chris says, would like to schedule a specific demo outside of this webinar. Chris, we'd love to do that. So if you just type, Chris would like a demo, phone number, email address, we'll set that up. And Jane says, have you ever had any data compromise? Jane, we have not, and we never will. Built into our system is that it's not going to happen. All right, folks, that brings us to the end of the webinar. I'm going to confer with a colleague here to find out who won the Kindle. But if you would like more information, a demo or a free eval unit, just type that into the questions tool with your salient details. Also, feel free to get in touch with me directly. My email address is ken@infrascale.com, and I welcome any comments, good or bad, ways that we can improve this webinar, questions about the product, whatever you like. And so just give us a tick here and we'll do a tally, and then we'll announce the winner of that Kindle. All right, we've got a tie today, folks. We've got Tommy and Jane. So Tommy and Jane, if you would just make sure we've got your details as well, you can type those on the line. That's Tommy NG and Jane Who. Congratulations, thanks for being active participants, and Carla will be in touch with you to get that webinar out to you. Alrighty folks, thank you everyone for your attention. I hope you enjoyed today's webinar. Hopefully we'll see you at another webinar in the future. That's it from me signing off. Have a great day.